In this week's episode of Modern Loan Officer, we're kicking off a two-part series on managing consumer debts and credit cards to put you into a better position to buy or refinance.
I keep looking at you.
Nice. Wow, that's all we got to look
So
at
far
right
away.
now. I know. Hey, are we live in here?
We're doing it right. We're doing it right. Hey, thanks for tuning in, everyone. You are watching or listening to MLO. And today we are going to unpack, and I'm going to use unpack because it's holiday season.
Yeah, I mean, gift wrapping, unpacking, and cutting boxes is what it's about, right?
Makes sense, Casey, but we are specifically talking about debt. We are talking about the holiday spending and the impact on the U.S. household.
And debt, you know,
Hammer time.
guys, we got a lot of it. Let's just be real. If you ever, what's that scary website, you know, U.S. World Debt, you ever gone on that thing and typed that in? Pretty impressive, but guys, there's some stuff that needs to be said regarding, you know, credit cards, debt spending, and holidays, and we're just going to try to give you some nuggets here, but I'm going to fair warn everybody, this is a lot of statistics we're about to throw at you.
Yeah, we did a lot of research. We were joking before. It's like, I think I've prepped more for this than the SATs back in high school. And not to scare anybody. Like, I respect what you just said, but at the same time, hey, like the United States economy is completely worked around credit and debt, not only from a consumer standpoint,
Right,
easy, but also businesses,
right.
the government itself. So. Really, it's factual, and this is what we got to do to get by. So we're going to talk about a few different buckets here. It's like, hey, what's the average amount spent on Christmas? What's the average interest rates for credit cards? And maybe some objective plans and strategies to help you tackle it. So just to kind of rip into it early, though, we do have to be a little more compliantly heavy than normal, right, Casey?
Yeah, especially if we're going to be talking kind of in this realm of credit and how that affects and the different, basically different sections it affects people, you know, incomes, credit scores, that stuff.
Yeah, lots of different layers to it. And the most important thing is like, we're going to be talking base about credit and debt specific. And we aren't licensed credit improvement experts or financial advisors. We are licensed mortgage originators or mortgage advisors. So
Yes, sir.
We have to say that all of this comes from a perspective of experience, you know, working with thousands of home buyers, home sellers, and refinancing, but also just our personal experience. We look at a lot of applications, right, Casey?
Right,
So
I
we
mean,
see a lot of credit reports.
We like to, you know, sometimes say, you know, we don't, you know, have to dive all into your guys' stuff on financing, but we read a lot of credit reports. Let's be honest. We really do a lot of credit, you know, review and looking at that stuff. And guys, we are, I mean, essentially we're lending you credit, right? We're lending you credit to buy the home at the end of the day. So hopefully we can give you guys some good perspective and some life lessons. And, you know, all of us, I think, have maybe had a little credit fault here or there. So hopefully we got some stories for you too.
Life lessons.
Life lessons, hopefully. I don't know.
With your beard, it's almost like, I don't know, it's so fatherly. For me.
I'd really gained some
Snuggle
years.
by the fire, kids.
Yeah.
It's time for a life lesson.
Life lesson.
Let's
yeah.
come together. Get close. Crisscross applesauce. I got some fun stats that aren't so intimidating right off the bat, though, because we did a lot of research for this particular episode. So we all know it was the holiday season. We're rolling into a new year here. So
these are the good ones.
one thing I found, the average spent in the United States on your spouse for the holidays. What would you guess someone would spend on your spouse?
Let me get a
dollar
guess.
amount.
Dollar amount. So we're going average spent on the spouse, correct?
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Yeah, no. I'm gonna go at clean $1,200.
On your spouse? National? That's a lot of money. Not even close.
Can I backtrack it to $250?
$123 is the average amount spent,
nice.
according to Fortunely.com, an article that we pulled up. This amazing tool. I don't know if you guys have heard it. It's called Google. We use it a lot to prepare for these episodes for fun little facts like that. Another one, 50% of U.S. citizens do not spend any money on holiday decor.
Really?
1 and 2, according to this article.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean,
They don't do it.
Well, I was wondering how people got to the point where it's like, the Griswolds, right? Where everything's covered on your lawn. Mm-hmm. And someone said, you have to buy something every year and store like everything every year. You're buying something new for the yard or something, right? But then there's 50 out there like not spending a penny on it.
Well, you got to put it a little bit. I mean, there's probably a big bucket of people that like say don't celebrate Christmas. Like it's not a part of their religion or their practice. But I mean, even in like my neighborhood, not everyone puts up lights. Like, we don't put up lights. We decorate, but like getting on a roof is really hard for our house because it's a very steep pitch. So I don't know. I mean, I thought that was really interesting, Casey. 50% of people don't spend $1. Ain't no dollar spent.
Ain't no dollar means. I mean, that's honestly, that's a little mind blowing for me. I figured at least you're gonna get some cookies or something,
Oh yeah. Okay, another good one.
That's a good.
47.4% of women actually want jewelry as their gift.
See, okay.
It sounds obvious, but I think it's profound to bring to the table and really digest that, especially as males.
47 want jewelry.
Yeah, that's a roundup. 50.
Yeah, that's I think that's where my mind was tweaking to, and I'm like throwing out $1,200 spent on your wife because good for you guys if you're doing that. That is a lot of cheese, but then it's like you think jewelry, but then, I mean, yeah, though, I mean.
50% rounding up.
Yeah.
And you just put yourself in an interesting position because your wife's going to watch this. So you set a high budget for yourself for her.
I know.
Publicly.
Like, wow.
$123, honey.
Publicly.
That's the max. Get creative. It's thought, not dollar, right, Casey?
It's thought, not dollar. But it does make sense because if I really am thinking about it, I mean, I typically don't see a lot of jewelry getting passed around during, Christmas time. I mean, at least.
I would assume a lot of that's very personal.
Yeah, it's probably just like.
And it's a desire, too. It's not an executed percentage. This is a statistic.
Good stuff here.
So to throw in, and I don't want to get too far off. This is just fun intro. We're warming people up because we're going to get into the serious stuff that you might look at yourself and be like, oh, I fall into that bucket. So this is fun, right?
For sure.
So we talked about women wanting jewelry.
Okay.
32.7% of men truly just want a gift card. 1/3.
Yeah, boys out there.
1/3 of males would just like a gift card. And this particular article from fortunely.com actually referred to it as a voucher. So it's like, oh, it's so professional. It's a gift card, all right? Voucher. Voucher, like, isn't that what you get when you check like your overcoat in at the steakhouse?
That's or you getting those like
oh yeah, the parking voucher. It's validation. That's what it's called. So I thought that was really interesting. And finally, the lowest statistic, 3.46% of people are admitted to lying about liking their gift to somebody. I thought it would be higher. Only 3.46% have lied about that. Maybe that's just a conversation where the gift giver and the receiver really just know that wasn't a good gift. So it just goes into the ethers of not spoken conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's where that stat really got skewed there. Not really fraud related, just it's swept under the rug, the holiday rug.
Thank you, Aunt, for the beautiful sweater.
Oh my gosh, I love my aunt, but once, I think I was like 6 or 7, she got me a Frisbee that didn't fly when thrown. That's a real thing. Like, it was a broken Frisbee. I don't know how you even find that or design one that doesn't work. You threw it and it was very deflating.
Yeah, that's I'm surprised on those rubber ones. Honestly, the little flimsy rubber ones. Like, my wife came home with one from Target the other day. I'm like, this thing doesn't fly. Dude, look at this thing. It's like
why
skin.
Did she buy that
skin.
at Target?
I don't know. They're always set you up on those checkouts, When you checkouts.
It is the grab and go.
Dude, they'll get you. Those grab and go sections will get you.
Well, now with social distancing, there's so much more time spent just like kind of staying apart and looking at these little options, Like, I saw a guy at Target really contemplate deeply about something near the register, and it was one of the bananagram games where it's just like a banana zipped and like all the letters are in it. Seriously, I'd never seen someone like really dive mentally, and like he looked at the tag, like this little tag that was on it, the front and the back, like how much it was, where it was likely made and produced.
Totally.
He put it in his cart, out of his cart, back on, back in. And I was waiting for my, my chance to check out.
Did you come up and tap him on the shoulder behind and go, excuse me, sir?
No, you don't touch people in public.
That was not on the COVID list. Do you see this flying Frisbee? Solo, singles? That's all day.
I'm sure it was like price matching it on Google Google and Amazon. He's like, well, I could get this for $6.79 on Amazon, guaranteed by January 4th, or I could pay $7.99 here at Target, but be rewarded with instant gratification for it going home today. So
I'm taking the buy.
Yeah, oh my God. Well, we're getting way off. That was a really fun, though, stats. Very
I like the
interesting.
stats. And for anyone that, just jumping in and tuning in, we'll kind of catch them up. You guys are listening to MLO Podcast, Modern Loan Officer. We're trying to give you guys some fun holiday statistics here before we really kind of just unpack, since it is Christmas time, some of these just average consumer debt levels, credit cards, and we're going to go into some of that spending. So hopefully you guys that are jumping in, you guys stick around, watch and listen, and we're going to give you guys some good stats.
Yeah, nice resurface there. To reiterate the title and the subject, debt. Holiday spending and the impact on the U.S. household. So we're going to roll that right into the average spent every holiday season by a home in the United States. And that figure actually runs at about $1,500 per household. So that's a pretty substantial amount of money. And it's going to be on a sliding scale, income-based. Like there might be some huge savers, higher incomes, more disposable income, and then maybe some lower income houses. So that is an average. But note that the average house does, according to the articles that we're researching here, $1,500 on Christmas. So
that's average spent on Christmas per household.
$1,500. Yeah, and we're using holidays, not just Christmas, because not everybody celebrates Christmas. But let's roll that into the average credit card debt per household.
Yeah.
And as of the 2020 stats, we're rounding up here at about $8,000 per household in credit card debt alone. This does not count your private loans, your auto loans, student loans. We're just talking about credit card debt, Casey.
Yeah, that one, it can get tricky because I think there's a misunderstanding with that credit card. And at the end of the day, for consumers that are young getting credit cards, they need to be fully aware of, how that can snowball later on or, how that even works. How about I just give you a breakdown? Credit cards are basically what comes with the cost of borrowing. Like if you're going to borrow some money, you need credit. That credit card can be there, but there is a cost to this, right? And I think a lot of people need to understand that. And hopefully we're going to kind of break that down for you guys by giving you guys kind of what these averages interest rates are and kind of these different debt levels. And it can help you make a better educated decision when it comes to purchasing or getting a credit card.
Yeah, and I think some of the basics rolling into the interest on credit, because I think
break it down for them, right?
It's a bigger thing where at least the United States really doesn't do a good job of educating kids, adults, anyone on how credit works. And it's kind of this Wizard of Oz, what's my score? We are adapting and improving the consumer model with FICO and different advantage scores credit wise so that consumers are more educated on the impact of their score on a more consistent basis than we saw just 3 to 5 years ago. But one thing, just the basics to know, the worse of the credit score that you have as a consumer, the higher the interest rate. So that might sound really obvious to some people, but not a lot of people are familiar with the kind of brackets, if we want to call them there. So you were, and I want to break that down here because I've got this little chart here, but the average interest rate.
Yeah, I'll give you
what were we seeing on
some
that?
nuggets here. And this is, we pulled this from some Business Insider, but we had some backing on Federal Reserve info, which is really good figures to use. And anyone out there, you guys can go on Federal Reserve, and they try to break it down per quarter what's going on in any kind of consumer and credit card spending. So if you really want to statistic and nerd out a little bit, get on that Federal Reserve site, and it'll give you all the data you want. Average credit card interest rate, we're going to call this the APR. So average APR for the credit cards across the United States right now is 14.5%.
14.5%. And to put that together more to maybe specific to an individual listener and watcher, is that 14.5% is the average of all of them. But the credit for 720 and higher, I'm looking at 13.5.
Yes, sir.
At 660 to 719, 16.5. So, and then it goes to 19, 20, and 21% averages when you go to the mid 600s or lower and into the 500s. So that 14 is an average. Like there's some even consumers out there who might even have a 25% interest rate regardless of credit, just because of that company is assessing a very specific, I don't want to say fraud, but not so favorable terms.
Not so favorable terms. And that's a great point you're putting out there too. Like, we don't want to come across and say like 14.5%, guys, everybody's got that, right? Yeah, it definitely is going to be catered
towards
that
sliding scale
with the credit scores and stuff. One thing that surprised me on that Federal Reserve, information was actually, according to their data that they had in October 2020 from polling, the revolving credit. So that's going to be like your credit cards. Your revolving credit, interest rates and APR stuff has actually decreased. And I'm sorry, I don't know exactly the time range. I mean, what I was looking at was from 15, I think, but this could be a little bit longer on what they're going off of, but it came down about 6.7% on this average that they're kind of looking at. So that's kind of, that's good to know. But at the end of the day, there's that sliding scale, right? So you could have someone that's at that 20, and then, someone at the 14.5. So.
Yeah, and we are seeing this year consumer debt actually go down. So I think some of that's related to, the feds are setting 0 to minimal interest rates, which are slightly lowering credit card debt. And then that's consumers are adjusting and wanting to stay out of debt in fear of maybe an unstable future. Now, that doesn't fit for everybody. Some people have had to rely on credit to get by, right, Casey? So it's not a like one size fits all scenario. But I think what's happening is the United States is seeing that we cannot get out of debt. That's becoming a more public thing rather than an unknown thing, right? And people are acting on it. Also, fair credit models where it's easier to access maybe an estimated or a trending credit score from like CreditWise, NerdWallet, all those Credit Karma, those estimators. So people are becoming more aware of their score. And that is a big chunk. Like according to a lot of articles, you're looking at about 1/3-ish, maybe upwards to 50% of your total credit score is coming from this history of credit, on-time payments, credit utilization.
Great point.
Which utilization is probably the biggest bucket. It's how much credit do you have allowed, and then what percentage have you used of it. So for simple math, say you got $1,000 limit, right? And you've got $500 balance at the end of the statement. That's 50% utilization. Sure. So what we use as mortgage advisors, and it's handed down knowledge. Like once again, we're not credit experts. I don't even know if that exists, if there really is a licensed credit expert, but we have to put that in the notes. But the general rule of thumb is you're wanting to keep that utilization ratio at about 20% or lower. And that's giving you a very good at-bat every single month, right, Casey, to get the most amount of points possible.
For sure. And it keeps you in that nice kind of, lower balance of your credit card, a nice revolving range. And again, we are not credit repair specialists or credit experts. This is kind of just passed down knowledge and stuff like that we have learned. But Addie makes a great point, guys. You do have to have, credit and debt to, start to establish and build a credit score. You need to have history. You need to have that kind of stuff. One thing, that I find very interesting, and there's been studies, and I'm not just throwing this out of there at the whim, but in your less income, lower income, poverty neighborhoods, this kind of stuff isn't talked about or is openly educated to people coming up in those areas. I mean, you don't have grandpa and grandma sitting down and saying, make sure you're getting a good job and you're setting yourself up and not getting buried in credit. Those conversations necessarily don't really happen there. I think there's a big growth for just information and knowledge, for people to be prepared when they are finally kind of stepping into that adulthood and coming out, because it's easy, I think, for people to get lost in credit cards and credit card debts.
I think it's definitely a missing piece just fundamentally in our educational system.
Perfect.
It completely goes over my head to why we don't talk about it. I mean, I have theories that are quite negative and a conspiracy that like the credit card companies are out there paying public schools not to teach it so that they can make more money on interest. I don't know if that's true. I probably shouldn't have said that.
We
but
might do a side theory on that.
I feel like someone like someone's going to be knocking on my door. And but I think that it's definitely the basics and understanding, and there's a lot of misperceptions out there, and it's difficult to find a safe place to learn about it. So right off the bat, you need to establish credit sooner than later. And there's some great approaches to even teenagers at 18 working with their parents on maybe authorized user and helping establish credit at an earlier age. But a lot of people get stuck to like say they got to start with like a credit rebuilding, right? And it causes a deposit, and then the disclosures of the terms weren't clearly laid out, and they can't increase their limit. So now they're always stuck with a $250 credit card, which they can only put, $50 max on, or they exceed that 20%, and then their credit score gets lopsided and it gets idled or anchored and it can't progress. So there's a lot to be said about establishing credit early, making sure you're working with relative companies, and if you ever need someone to at least push you in the right directions, we have a lot of tools, and there's a list of people, Casey, that we can introduce you to, and links and articles to get you on the right page. But we always urge people to hit us up on that the VIP line, right?
Yeah, but we got that number. You guys can call it in. You guys can shoot comments on our Facebook when we're shooting live or anytime. That number, though, you can give us a call anytime. That number is going to be 503-847. And that is the VIP. 9038. So 503-847-9038. That's our phone number. You guys can hit us up anytime you got questions involved in, whatever it is. We're here to help you. Mainly real estate and mortgages, but some of this credit card stuff, we can definitely try to give you guys our best information. And I think, you're making great points, Addie. There are so many layers to it. It's like, just because you get okay, we don't have any credit established. Need to get it going, right? Mm-hmm. We get a $250 card, but now you got to understand how to use it, because it's only $250. You go put $200 on there. Now we're getting close to maxing this thing out, and that can adversely affect you, right? It doesn't just you're not just getting good credit just for having a credit score. You got to manage it well. And so that's a great point that I don't think people realize too, because I think that first credit card that's probably the biggest one to focus on, and set it up right? Because that one could be the snowball bridge effect if you get, too small. So I think, I don't know if we pulled that statistic, but that'd be a good one to know on the, what's the average balance on a first card. But you're right. If it's $250, you might set yourself up for a tighter kind of, spending or trying to figure that out. Maybe the $500 or $1,000 is good to go. But again, don't want to overextend it because you maybe haven't had credit. You don't want to, figure that out the hard way. So
I think
fine line layers.
Yeah, and going into just kind of at least how I go through the steps of the credit introduction when I'm doing mortgage strategy calls with people. And once again, I don't even know a licensed credit advisor. I don't know if they exist, but I'm a mortgage advisor, a licensed mortgage advisor in the state of Oregon and Washington. But how I kind of experience and credit and explain it to people is, if you're trying to dive in, typically, if you haven't established credit, you're subscribing to the I hate credit mindset, which I totally understand. I remember my father at one point, I don't remember a specific age, telling me credit cards are horrible and this and that and that. And I'm sure it was out of frustration, but that implanted in my brain, growing up and eventually becoming an adult, still working at it. I always like to say, hey, if you're going to start somewhere, if you have a banking relationship, meaning you have an established checking or savings account, that's a really good place to start and see if that particular banking institution has a starting credit card. Because you actually do have some sort of history with that bank. So they can see that, Casey gets his payroll checks deposited here, he pays his bills. So often they're going to be a little more comfortable than, say, going to a major credit card company that doesn't know who you are. You're just a random social security number, date of birth, and name, right? Yeah. So start there. I think that's a really good place to go, and work with someone that's easy and convenient and sees your cash flow.
That's a great point, Addie. And God, that's a nugget there.
It's a good way to start.
You're tuning in. That's a good piece to know. Do not, if you want to start somewhere, maybe start with that local credit union that you bank with, or your local bank, and and start there, because that's actually makes a lot of sense.
You do have a relationship.
You do have a relationship there, and I've never even thought about it that way. I mean, you call up your 1-800-DISCOVER or whatever. They don't know you. They don't have any. You got no backing, and you're a fresh young kid trying to get a card.
Yeah,
that's a great point, Eddie. Dang. Thanks for watching this episode of Modern Loan Officer. Be sure to tune in next week for part 2 of managing consumer debts and credit cards.